Welcome back, it's Zion from Uke On Demand, and this week we're going over the Foggy Do. What you just heard was our low G arrangement, but in this tutorial we'll be teaching the high G version since that's the more common tuning. At ukeondemand.com though, you can get access to both versions, and they're almost identical. There are just a couple of small differences between the two. We're going to go over the first half of the song in this video, but you can get the rest of the lesson and all the tabs at ukeondemand.com. So to begin, I'll play the first section of the song so you can hear how it goes very slowly. And to play that part, we're going to start off in an E minor, but it will not look like your typical E minor down here. Instead, we'll be doing a partial bar up here at the 7th fret, and we're only going to be barring the bottom 3 strings, so the E, the C, the E, and the A. We're gonna, before we strum that chord, we're just gonna pick the E string by itself, followed by the 10th fret of the E. You're going to leave this finger there. You can use either your ring finger or your pinky, whichever is more comfortable. Remove the finger and then just strum that entire bar chord. Pinky back to 10th, pick the 10th fret and then the 7th fret of E. And then still leaving that bar there, 7th fret of A. And again, leave the bar there. We're going to bring the pinky back up to the 10th and do it again. So 10th to 7th. Now we're going to strum all open strings. So an A minor 7. It's the easiest chord there is out there. After that, pick the 2nd fret of A. And then here we have a little slide. We're going to be sliding from the 4th fret of the C to the 2nd fret. And if you're unfamiliar with how slides work or what they are, we do have a lesson on them in our techniques library at ukeondemand.com. Moving on, we're going to pick the open E string followed by the 2nd fret of E. And then we're going to go into a more familiar shape of E minor down here. Which is, if you're unfamiliar with E minor, that's just the index finger on the 2nd fret of A, middle finger on the 3rd fret of E, and ring finger on the 4th fret of the C. And we're not going to strum the entire chord yet. We're just going to strum the top 3 strings. So G, C, and E, and we're not going to strum A. And then after we strum those top 3 strings, then we get to pick that 2nd fret of A individually. So we're going to leave the chord there as we pick. You can either pull off to open A, or just release and pick A individually. You pick the 3rd fret of the E. Your middle finger is already on there. Open E. 2nd fret of C, so your index finger can come over to the C string. And then the last note of this section is actually on the beginning of the 2nd bar. We're just going to pick that E string by itself. And here's one of those small differences between the low G and high G arrangements. In our high G version, we just pick the E string by itself. But if you've got that low G ukulele and those lower notes, you can pick that G, the open G, along with the E string. So it's just tiny differences like that that differentiate the two arrangements. let's go back to the beginning of bar 1 and play it together very slowly. You're lucky because going into bar 2, it's almost identical to the first bar. So this first section is going to be very, very familiar to you. We're essentially going to repeat the same thing again. So you can just follow along since this first section is exactly the same. It's just going to be making that bar chord, pick the E string to 10th fret, and then move the pinky and strum the bar. Then pinky back up to 10th. I'm going to pick 10th to the 7th of the E. And then 7th fret A. Back to the E, 10th to 7th. And then all open strings. 2nd fret A. And then the little slide. Now here comes the only difference between the first two bars. And in our first bar, we've played the open E and 2nd fret of E before going into the final measure, and so on. But in this second bar, we skip the 2nd fret of the E. And so we're just going to instead hold that D note a little bit longer, and then just pick the E string, and then launch right into that final bar, or final measure of the bar. So the only difference is one note. And so, again, going over that last measure right there, you're going to make a regular E minor shape. I'm going to strum the top 3 strings, then pick that last string individually, open A, 3rd fret E, open E, 2nd fret C, and then just like the last bar, we're ending on an open E. So the nice part about this first half of the song is that if you learn one bar, you also learn the second. And so it's a little bit easier before we go into bar 3, which is quite different. To get the rest of the tutorial and all the tabs, head over to ukeondemand.com. Make sure to subscribe below so you don't miss out on our upcoming fingerstyle tutorials. We'll see you next time.